I have always argued that Nigeria is plagued with miseducation. Miseducation in Nigeria is like a disease, it is a pandemic, and it is something that everybody have to look into. Now, I want to speak about the talk about Nnamdi Azikiwe being the first president of Nigeria. We are people who are from an educational system where we are told that right from a very young age, we are told in schools that it was a white man from a distant Europe that discovered River Niger, Mungo Park. What that means is that River Niger that is in Nigeria, the people who lived around that area never saw that river. They never knew the river was there. It had to take someone from all the way Europe to come to Nigeria and discover a river that has been existing. I don't know if Mungo Park arrived in Nigeria and created a river. I don't know if the river was not in existence before Mungo Park got into Nigeria. That it is recorded that it is Mungo Park who discovered a river in Nigeria. And we believe these things. We teach these things to our children. We've also taught our children that it was a white woman, Mary Slessor, who stopped the killing of twins in Calabar. That is a generational lie. First of all, Calabar never did anything like killing of twins per se. Understand where I'm coming from? It was a taboo to live with twins, or they didn't see it as normal having twins. So when someone gives birth to twins, the twins are ostracized, not killed. Calabar people never brought twins, and I don't know if they will behead them, or I don't know what they will do to them that it will be considered killing. For example, someone gives birth to twins, they will just take the twins. It's their tradition that they take the twins and go and dump them in the forest. Anything could happen to those twins there. They could cry themselves to death, or someone might rescue them, like someone whose community doesn't abhor twins could be passing by and sees the twins and take those twins to their own community. So there wasn't something like a direct killing of twins. They just didn't see it as natural. It was the best they knew. And it was King Eyo Honesty, the same Calabar person, a Calabar ruler, traditional ruler, who abolished the killing of twins long before Mary Slessor got into Nigeria. Mary Slessor just came and continued from where King Eyo Honesty's directive didn't get it to. Is it not the same Mary Slessor who came with slave traders? Why did she not tell the slave traders to stop enslaving Africans? It is to go and talk about killing of twins that they will know. But there are traditions in Nigeria that celebrated and even worship twins. The Yoruba tradition, Ibeji, they saw twins as a gift from God. Why did the white books not talk about those ones? They only focus on the things that will use to make you feel less of yourself. Anybody who wants to always talk about the things that will make you feel less of yourself, that person is not a friend. I don't know why we allow foreigners to write our stories for us. You need to own your stories. You need to write your stories yourself. That is the only time people will get the true picture of who you are or what you are. Now, the talk is about Nnamdi Azikiwe being the first president of Nigeria. Let me be very clear. Nnamdi Azikiwe was never a president. Nnamdi Azikiwe was never a president in Nigeria. The Igbo have never had a president. All those talks about Nnamdi Azikiwe being the first president of Nigeria are based on miseducation. When Nnamdi Azikiwe was alive in Nigeria, in Nigerian politics actively, Nigeria never had a presidential system of government. It is only in a presidential system of government that you have a president. Nigeria was practicing something that looked like parliamentary system. Nigeria was practicing something that looked like the Westminster system of government. It wasn't presidential. Take note. So, in a Westminster patterned or parliamentary patterned system of government, do they have a president? They just give these funny names to things and make people feel like they don't know what they are doing. Now, there is a UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, currently, who is the president of the United Kingdom. If they had a prime minister, they've had Rishi Sunak, they've had Boris Johnson, they've had David Cameron, they've had Liz Truss. All those UK prime ministers, who were their presidents. So why will you have something like a parliamentary or Westminster system of governance and you are saying you have a president? Abubakar Tafawa Balewa was the prime minister at the same time you guys were calling Nnamdi Azikiwe a president. How does that work? It was Tafawa Balewa who was the head of government. Nnamdi Azikiwe was just a mere head of state. The head of state doesn't control any executive power. The head of state was just a figurehead, the Queen's representative to Nigeria. Nigeria was and is a colony of the United Kingdom. Nigeria is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. The Commonwealth is a committee of countries that are or were British colonies. And the Queen is considered the royal leader of each and every of those countries. So the Queen has a representative because the Queen will not be administering her royalty over all of those countries directly at the same time. The Queen cannot be in Nigeria and at the same time is in Ghana, for example. So the Queen will have representatives. It wasn't even an elected position. A position that was not elected cannot be considered presidential. We should try to have sense and unlearn some of this nonsense. So Nnamdi Azikiwe was the Queen's representative to Nigeria, and he was heavily selected because as at then, amongst the politicians, the top politicians they had in those days, Nnamdi Azikiwe was one of the most educated. He knew how to communicate in English language at a very high level. He was a journalist. He had the West African pilot. He studied very widely. So he best suited the position of the representative of the Queen. He is the one who was communicating back to the Queen whatever was going on in Nigeria. He never occupied an executive position. He was just a figurehead. So that's why people call him ceremonial president. But the idea of even mentioning president to relate to Nnamdi Azikiwe is very wrong. You can call him a ceremonial head of state because he was just there to perform ceremonies, not to run a government. For example, on our Independence Day, he will be the one that will go to like the Eagle Square to take salutes. If there were foreign dignitaries, like a foreign president is visiting Nigeria it was Nnamdi Azikiwe that will welcome and receive that president and then get the president to meet the head of government, who was Tafawa Balewa. In fact, Nnamdi Azikiwe would only act on the instance or directive of the head of government, who was Tafawa Balewa. The 1964 the 1964 election, Nnamdi Azikiwe wanted it to be postponed, but Tafawa Balewa's insistence on the election to be held that year stood because Tafawa Balewa was actually the one controlling executive power. Tafawa Balewa's political party formed the majority in the National Assembly, and by that they are the ones that will form the government, and the leader of the party becomes the head of government, the prime minister. That is how it worked. So Nnamdi Azikiwe was never the president. There was no election. Which election was it that Nnamdi Azikiwe won to become the president of Nigeria? He started out as a governor general. He started out as a representative of the Queen. It's as simple as that. So the idea of Nnamdi Azikiwe being a president, and what that means is that Igbo have produced a president before, is a very wrong idea. It's fallacious. The Igbo has never been a president in the history of Nigeria, and it's quite unfair. Over 66 years and counting, a major ethnic group has not produced a president. Does it mean they do not have people who have been qualified enough to become president? When you are in a country that is highly ethnically pluralized, you should be careful to make sure that ethnicity is evenly distributed in lines with political or leadership positions. If not, the other ethnic group will feel marginalized. So when the Igbo are feeling marginalized, they have a point. Igbo is a major ethnic. When we were in primary and secondary schools, they taught us that Nigeria is a country that has variety of ethnic groups and tribes. In fact, that is one of the things that they taught us in the primary school that was actually correct. We have over 200 and something ethnicities, or you can call it nations. And amongst them, there are three major ones: Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo, Wazobia. So why is it that it is two out of these three that has always controlled the highest position in the land, to the point that at some point it was even given to someone from Ijo, even though that one happened as a coincidence, but he still went ahead to win a general election. What is the problem with the Igbo person? Is it a problem of competence? Is it that Igbo doesn't have people who are competent enough to be president? I do not know if Peter Obi is not competent enough. I do not support a politician. I do not support Peter Obi. I am just stating facts. But I am of the opinion that it is absolutely unfair and an attack to equity if after 66 years an Igbo person has not been president. And someone will come and tell you Nnamdi Azikiwe was president and Nnamdi Azikiwe was Igbo. So an Igbo person has been president. It is a wrong teaching and it has to stop. If you do not think the Igbo is qualified to be president, that's your business, but do not lie about it. Igbo has never been president. Nnamdi Azikiwe was never a president when Nnamdi Azikiwe was actively in politics. Nigeria wasn't running a presidential system of government. It was Westminster or parliamentary. And in a Westminster or parliamentary system, there is no president. There is the prime minister and there is the head of state, which is mostly monarchical. But in the case of Nigeria, it was absolutely political. So don't let anybody to fool you or confuse you, and stop passing this kind of miseducation to your next generation.